So you said, how do you maintain a good perspective when life gets tough? What's your personal mission statement? Okay, okay, so sometimes when life gets tough, I have this thing I just kind of say to myself to keep from saying something negative. I'll just be like, man, life. That's it, because that's what this is. This is life. So to keep from saying something negative and put some negative energy out there, I just say life. And I know what I mean when I say that. But my personal mission statement, I have always been one to say, you have to do what you got to do until you can do what you want to do.
Yes.
Just meaning we sometimes we got to go through some things and we just have to kind of show up and be present and push through until we can get to a place to where we want to do the things that we want to do. I mean, we can do the things
Definitely.
that we want to do. So I guess just kind of reminding myself, like I said, it's life and nothing is really predictable. So sometimes we do have to deal with some things, but we got to push through it until we can get where we want to be. So what
Yes,
about you?
ma'am. For me, I try to do something that I like or love every day. So
Mhm.
listening to music is, it's like oxygen. I have to have it. So music always picks me up, no matter how I may feel. When
Good,
I
good.
put on a song or an artist that I really, really like or love, it just automatically picks me up. And having close friends and family, and just knowing that I got this, coming from a solid family and seeing
Mhm.
my parents persevere through obstacles, I know that it's within me and I can do the same. Just have to give myself pep talks. Like you said, this is life.
Yep, yep.
Stuff is going to happen, sometimes out of our control, but what we can control, we definitely need to do our part to
Right.
manage what we can and eliminate the negativity as much as possible. And I also like what you said, do what you have to do so you can do what you want to do. It made me think about the movie The Great Debaters, the
Hmm.
really young college kid that was only 14 when he went, and Forrest
Hmm.
Whitaker played his father. That was
Hmm.
something he told his son one time when he got home from class. And he was like, "You have homework?" He was like, "What do I always say? You do what you got to do so you can do what you want to do." And that's discipline. That's a big part of being a disciplined person, because especially as an adult, life is not going to be a playground. And as much as we think when we're little, oh, I can't wait till I'm grown so I can do what I want to do, but it's really not like that. It's really not like that. And I would say I don't have one personal motto, but what you quoted and what Forrest Whitaker's character said in that movie, you do what you have to do, and you try to make the most of every day and actually live. Like, try to make sure you're living sometimes and not just surviving. Because we
Right.
all get in survival mode. So we have to take the time to actually live.
Yeah, that's very important. That's good that you mentioned that too.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Because seems like it just keeps getting tougher and tougher, especially with everything that's going on. And I don't know about in Arkadelphia, because you're in Arkadelphia, right?
Yes, I am.
Right. And well, in Little Rock, it just got to a rough, violent start this year.
Hmm.
I don't ever remember so much happening at the beginning of the year like it has this year. Maybe it has in the past, but not to what I can remember. And that can just really drain you if you let it.
Right.
Yes,
If you
ma'am.
live. Have you ever experienced a significant loss or trauma?
Yes, relatives close to me that have passed on. I
Mhm.
would say my divorce as
Mhm.
well.
Right.
But I think the toughest time for me, besides when I went through a divorce, is when my dad passed away. I was only 21 and I was a junior in college, and it was right before like finals because he passed away towards the end of April. And
Okay.
we had his funeral on April 27th, and I still had to take my exams, and it was just so difficult. But I managed to push through and get everything done, and that was such a big relief when I finally took that last exam. But that was definitely one of the most challenging parts of my life. And then I found out I was pregnant with my daughter as well, but I had known for a couple of months, and my dad knew that I was pregnant, but he didn't get to meet his first grandchild because my daughter is the oldest grandchild. So he didn't get to meet any of them because my sisters and I, we were all pregnant at the same time, but my daughter was a few months ahead of their babies.
Uh-huh.
So that made it even sadder that he didn't get to meet, his first grandchild, even though he knew, he did know that I was expecting. So together since 10th grade,
Hmm.
and we have two children together. So I don't know if I have effectively um, dealt with it, but I am a talker. So I do talk to people that are close to me. Um, and I've talked to both of my children because I don't want them to repeat the cycle of, you marry the wrong person, then you get a divorce and all of that, trying to bring the person down once the divorce is over. That's not cool. So,
Right.
like, please learn from this and don't repeat it because it does not have to be repeated. The cycle can be broken. So I felt like I broke it by getting a divorce, but I don't want them to go through that whole, oh, I'm with the wrong person. I didn't pay attention to the red flags, or I thought I was supposed to be with him or her because we've been together forever. So it just felt like that's what I was supposed to do because it's happened on both sides of my ex-husband's side of the family and mine as well. So I definitely want them to choose wiser and do better. So we have to talk to our children to
That's
try
true.
to steer them in the right direction.
Hmm. And more importantly, with our children, I was having a conversation with my daughter on yesterday. We talk to them, we teach them, but we got to be mindful they're watching us too. So even the things that we
Exactly.
don't say, they're watching that, and that's going to shape their worldview on how they navigate life in the world as they go through it. So we got to be mindful in all areas.
Yes, because what we do is what is more important than what we say.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right. So I'm glad you brought that up because often children do what they see,
Hmm.
be it right or be it wrong, because you
Hmm.
model the behaviors that were modeled to you. So that
Yeah.
was a very good point that
Yeah.
you brought that up. Yes, ma'am. How are you managing stress in your life?
Hmm. That's a good question. How am I managing stress? I will say that I have my good days and my bad days. Even though I'm very, I guess, knowledgeable and I'm in this field, I'm still not perfect when it comes to managing stress. Sometimes things do get the better part of me, as I move through day-to-day life. So I guess the main things I try to do, I try to exercise regularly. I do try to do my self-care things, once a month. Um, Sometimes I just escape. I do like music as well. I like music that doesn't really have words, just the music. Not always listening to something that has words to it, but just music. And as far as if I'm listening to music with words, I like 90s R&B and older. That's where I'm
Yes.
at.
Yes, ma'am. Ditto to that 90s R&B and older.
Exactly.
That's what I grew up to, and it's nothing like 80s and 90s R&B.
Right.
I don't know which one I like better because I love them both. I might like 80s R&B a little bit better. I don't know, but both were great decades of music, period.
Oh, yes, most definitely. Most
And it
definitely.
takes you back to an innocent place and time. And at times I find myself tearing up when I listen to that old music. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was back when life was simple and you didn't have any problems. So
Yeah.
yes, I love, love, love R&B. I would say it's my second most favorite genre of music because I would say my favorite genre is soul
Okay.
music. But they go together, but they're not exactly the same because some people put them together. Like soul is exactly the same as R&B when it's not. But I would say they're first cousins or siblings, however you want to say it. So
Yeah.
yes, music is so important. So you like music, you
Hmm.
exercise, and what else do you like to do to manage stress?
Okay, so I do the once a month thing, like, the nails
Right,
and
yeah, you did mention that.
stuff and the massage. And I like to watch a lot of old TV shows too. Like my
Mhm.
go-to show is Living Single. And I don't care how many times I watch it, I will start it over and laugh like it's the first time I saw it. It's just
Right.
90s R&B. It puts me back in a time where life was more simple than it is
Yes.
today. Those
Yes.
are some of the staples that I do.
Yeah, same here. I do the same. I should go back and watch those old shows
Uh-huh.
often, like actually just stream them
Mm-hmm.
because I love living single as well and A Different World, The Cosby Show, Martin, all of those shows. And like you said, it takes you back to when life was simpler and you reminisce. I also exercise as well. It's not easy for me. I told you in our first session that we accidentally didn't record, but anyway, I'm prepping for the half marathon and it's not easy for
Yeah,
me.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm constantly working out because I work out 5 days a week. But when I prep for the half, because I've done it 3 times before, I have to make myself go outside and run because there's nothing like your feet pounding that pavement. Like being on a treadmill is not the same.
No,
Any
it's
type of
definitely not.
exercise, it's not the same as being outside. And you also have to get accustomed to the weather because it's always cold, but it also might be drizzling that day, and often it's both. So that's another reason why you have to make yourself go outside. But it's a really good sense of accomplishment after you do it. And talking for me is also therapeutic. And I said I was going to start journaling more. I do have this journal that I have in my backpack. I'm gonna
Hmm.
have to make it a habit and actually do that because I think that that would really help me a lot.
Yeah, that's a good coping skill and a good healthy outlet as well. I
Mhm.
would say let's go to our journals rather than going to social media.
Oh yes, I get sick of that. And that's
Exactly.
something I can say I do not do. And I think I have my parents to thank for that. Just it's like you don't air your dirty laundry.
Yeah, yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people will interact with that over something positive.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yes, I'm sure we've all seen those posts, and we're like, "Oh my goodness, why did he or she post this?"
Exactly. Based on some temporary emotions. So yeah, we just once again mindfulness. We got to be more mindful when you talk about living instead of existing. Mindfulness is a big factor, just being present.
Right. And think twice, 3 or 4 times before you hit that send button or publish. Yes,
Yeah,
ma'am.
yeah.
Because people have gotten terminated from their jobs over
Yeah.
what they post. Like this one lady, she wasn't even airing dirty laundry, but she's a flight attendant. And I think I
Mhm.
saw it about 2 or 3 weeks ago where she made a TikTok and she was dancing. I guess kind of like suggesting she was twerking and she got
Okay.
fired from that.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and she thought she was just having fun, but the plane was empty. I don't know
Yeah,
if they were preparing for a flight or if they had just ended a flight,
yeah.
but she made a little video, didn't think nothing of it, and she ended up getting fired. And that's
Wow.
what she was doing. She was twerking. And it's
Wow.
not like she was showing anything. She just had on her flight attendant uniform, but it's like you were disrespecting the uniform, you were disrespecting the plane, you were disrespecting the brand.
I
So
get it.
yes, ma'am. I
I get
saw that on I think it was Instagram. So
okay.
yes, we definitely need to think twice before we post whatever it is. Okay,
Exactly.
next question. Did COVID affect your mental health?
Okay. I guess thinking back on COVID, um, because even during that time, I'm still in this role as therapist. So at that time, I was not in private practice. It was just kind of like in the works. So I was working school-based and everything had to go to telehealth. And I'm working with children. And so telehealth with children, you probably can already imagine that's kind of difficult. So that was a difficult time. At first, there was a lot of fear. When you first started hearing about the virus and all of that, there was a lot of fear. There was a lot of fear about I don't know what you can call it, the jab, I guess. There was a lot of fear about that as well. So I guess that was probably the biggest effect. But just kind of thinking back on it from where I am now, I don't think it had a big, huge
Right.
effect on me because
Right. I was gonna say the same. I feel like it didn't for me either. I would get like anybody would. I'm sure all of us did. I would get a little annoyed and frustrated when I would go to the store and it's like you had to be 2 feet or 3 feet, and some of the employees were so adamant about it and kind of like in your face about it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, okay, okay. It's like calm down a little bit. So that's what would really just that would just really get
Right.
yes,
If you
ma'am.
live.
Yes,
Mm.
ma'am. Okay. You want me to continue asking the questions or do you want to ask me one?
Do you want to just jump around? Because I was just gonna go from top to bottom.
We can. We can go from top to bottom. Go ahead.
That's just what I had my mind made up. Okay, so next question. Have you ever experienced a significant loss or trauma?
Yes, relatives close to me that have passed on. I
Mhm.
would say my divorce as
Mhm.
well.
Okay.
But I think the toughest time for me, besides when I went through a divorce, is when my dad passed away. I was only 21 and I was a junior in college, and it was right before like finals because he passed away towards the end of April. And
Okay.
we had his funeral on April 27th, and I still had to take my exams, and it was just so difficult. But I managed to push through and get everything done, and that was such a big relief when I finally took that last exam. But that was definitely one of the most challenging parts of my life. And then I found out I was pregnant with my daughter as well, but I had known for a couple of months, and my dad knew that I was pregnant, but he didn't get to meet his first grandchild because my daughter is the oldest grandchild. So he didn't get to meet any of them because my sisters and I, we were all pregnant at the same time, but my daughter was a few months ahead of their babies.
Uh-huh.
So that made it even sadder that he didn't get to meet his first grandchild, even though he knew, he did know that I was expecting. So that was definitely one of the most challenging parts of my life. But I know my dad would not have wanted me to give up because he was college educated and he earned his master's, and I went on to earn mine. And he
Yeah.
was a teacher and a coach, and I'm a teacher primarily because of my dad. So I definitely wish that he were still around so he could see how much he impacted me because I used to always think that my mom had the greatest influence on me. And
Uh-huh.
she's great as well, and she's still here. But definitely, I would say my dad had the most impact on me out of any one single person because I watched him work 3 jobs, and I've like worked 2 jobs and gone to grad school, and I get my hustle from him. So that was
Okay.
definitely one of the most challenging parts. And my dad passed away in 2001, and the year before that, it was my grandfather, and the year before that, it was my mom's sister. So it was all, and I had
Yeah.
an uncle thrown in
That-
there too. It was all back to back. Yeah,
Mhm.
one of my uncles passed away like 2 or 3 weeks before my grandfather. So it was in '99 my auntie, 2000 my uncle and my grandfather, then 2001 my dad. So it was just all back to back.
Okay.
So, but
Okay.
I would say that's the most, besides my divorce, most challenging um period of my life for sure, for sure. Um, but then again, death is a part of life, so we have to
That is
make
true.
sure that we learn how to handle it and cope with it and move on because our relatives and friends who have passed away, they wouldn't want us to stop and give up and not
Yeah.
know how to proceed.
Yeah. Society has really placed I guess some unhealthy views when it comes to death, and that's why it is so difficult for us. When you learn to look at it from a different perspective,
Mhm.
it doesn't mean that it doesn't hurt. It's just kind of easier to deal with, I guess, going through things like that because we understand it's going to happen. It's inevitable.
Right, exactly.
Mhm.
Yes, ma'am. And what about for you? The
I
same question for you.
Yeah, the most significant loss I have experienced is my mother. I grew up with just my mother.
Mhm.
And in 2021, she passed away. And it was sudden, it wasn't
Mhm. And it
it
makes it harder.
Yeah, it wasn't like some people experience where they're sick or they're on hospice or something like that, and you know it's coming. It was just sudden. You know, my sister went over to visit her because they live in the same city, and where I grew up, and she went over to visit her, and she had passed away sometime that night, and so that did make it a little bit more difficult, and that was the first, really close person to me that I had lost. So
Right.
it was just a really difficult time going through that, trying to understand it, getting a different perspective of what death looks like. So, and me being a therapist, I, have that extra pressure like, okay, I'm a therapist. I should be able to handle this. I need to be strong. I need to show up, I need to be present, all of these different thoughts. And then at the same time, this is my mother. I'm grieving. I got to do funeral arrangements. Never done this type of
I
thing.
know that's tough.
I have all these different hats and all these different thoughts that I'm having at this time. But one thing that I was able to do later on that year that really helped me, and like I said, I'm a therapist, so I have like, I guess, access that most people wouldn't have in that situation. I went to this training to become a grief informed professional. And so
Mhm.
I did it because I was like, okay, I need to be grief informed so I can assist other people. However, it helped me through the process.
Right.
Going through the training, it helped me through the process. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of what helped me get through the rest of that year. Now it's going to be 4 years next month, and so it's still difficult times. But
Yes, absolutely.
when you understand more about death and you have a different perspective, it kind of makes it a little bit easier to deal with and go through. And here, I did have a client to pass away back in August, and then just last month my colleague, who she had been with me since I opened G&J Counseling here in this location, she passed away last month, and it was unexpected as well. She had just been in the office with me the day before. We had
Oh
talked.
wow.
We were working and all of that. Um, and then, at the end of the day, we text each other because she had left and I was leaving after she left and all of that. And then next phone call I get, she has been found and she's deceased. And she was young. She was only 38 years old.
Oh,
So that's still something that's kind of heavy on me as well. But like I said, I kind of have a different perspective on death.
right. It's more difficult when it is unexpected.
Hmm.
Right. And especially how you just saw her the day before. And it's like you can't believe it when it happens like that, when you just saw the person. You're like, no, there's no way.
Right. And they were doing fine. You know how we do.
Right.
Yeah. So, okay. I guess we can move on. Does your past trauma have any effect on your life as of today? And if so, what are some ways you deal with them?
Most definitely the particular situation I feel like this applies to is when I try to date.
Okay.
And I say try
Uh,
because I've become accustomed to being by myself, but off and on I've dated since my divorce. And I think I'm pretty good with going into it with an open mind, but I always keep my eyes peeled for the red flag because I
mm-hmm,
feel like that's my job. That's what I'm supposed to do, to
mm-hmm,
guard my heart. So when I see something that reminds me of what I've already been through, I do talk to the person that I'm with at the time and tell them why it bothers me that they do what they do. And then if they continue to do what they do, I end it because I don't want to go through that same scenario, like the same type of relationship with a different person.
I got you.
Right. Like when I've heard people say that about uh battered women and how they repeat the relationship that they just got out of. I think it's because we often, we'll ignore the red flags. We're like, oh, it'll get better and this, and that. And I think sometimes people are just so desperate to say they have someone, but
Mm-hmm,
I don't feel like that because I do feel okay by myself. Like sometimes, yes, I desire a partner,
mm-hmm.
but since I feel content on my own, I think that's another reason why I'm like, I'm okay, if it doesn't work out. And
Yeah.
I don't want to be with the wrong person just to say that I have someone. But at the same time, I try to make sure I'm not judging them based on what I've been through, like, oh, he's just like so and so, so and so. But if I see the same behaviors by the same token, I have to speak up and say something about it. Because if not, I'm putting myself in the same situation again, and
Mhm.
I'll have myself to blame.
Exactly.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I guess same question for me. Trauma, I guess most of my trauma, like I just mentioned, come from losing my mom, but there was some childhood trauma as well. And so, how do you deal with it? I'm a therapist. Most therapists are therapists for a reason. We have some type of background that kind of pushed us into this field. Um, it's kind of, I call it more of a calling than a profession, for the ones that are truly supposed to be in that field. Now, there are some therapists in the field that this ain't necessarily what they should be doing. But for those that are really serious about it, it's more so a calling than just I made a choice to become a therapist. It was something that pushed us to that
Right.
area. And so I think that's a lot of that is just my way of giving back to people in certain situations, kind of giving what I didn't have when I was growing up. And I really feel like that's my way of dealing with a lot of the trauma that I experienced as a child.